Let's explore the transformation of relationships on the spiritual journey. So typically when we meet the other as a story. That when we are identified with thought, we're meeting them as a person. And it's always this story. In fact, you experience this conversation, which is typically about the past. This past, this history. It's the story. So there's not really a true meeting. And it's going to feel like you kind of bring the past to this present moment. There's comparing notes, there's referencing the conversation previous. If it's a close relationship, the referencing of yesterday. And there's a sort of staleness to it because it's the past. The past is gone. The past is dead. And this is sort of a filter that's overlaid over this present moment. And it's not a true meeting because really it's just your projection of the other. It's your story. Clearly, your thoughts about the other is not the other. I'll reverse it. Clearly, your thoughts of me is not me. So like this, it always feels like you never truly meet the other. Two minds never meet. Now, as this journey progresses, you aren't meeting the other as a person as much, we can say. That you are less identified, and as you are less identified, you're not bringing the past to this present moment as much. In the absence of bringing the past or layering the past on this present moment, in the absence of the story, then there's simply just what is. And this feels fresh. It feels new. In contrast to how it was before, when there was a lot of identification, there's always this baggage. But when you're less identified, there's less baggage. So there's a lightness that you're experiencing. There's a freshness. It's like a clean slate. Now, this is typically harder with close relationships where there's a lot of resentment. You did something wrong. I blamed you for it. It's your fault. And there's kind of this carrying resentment. This baggage, this heaviness, this stickiness. It's this story that's sticky. It's really this identification as being just the person that's sticky, because this is what everything is sticking to. And without that identification, or I could say, as there's less and less, as this journey is progressing, less and less identification, less and less baggage is being carried. And there's a lightness to this moment, this kind of blank canvas. You're not bringing like a scorecard into this moment. What did you do for me last time? What did you do to me? You're not bringing this scorecard. You're not bringing this history. And that it truly feels like you are meeting the other with fresh eyes. There's a freshness. There's an innocence. There's a nakedness. Without referring to the past of what they did or what happened, there's just this innocence. It's like it's a fresh moment. It's brand new. It's a clean slate. It's like a new beginning. So you're not meeting them as a person, but you're meeting this moment as presence. This presence is impersonal. So it doesn't have this stickiness. It's not holding on to anything. This presence has no past, has no future. So like this, more and more, you are meeting the moment as presence. This innocence, this nakedness, this freshness, this openness. You're not meeting the other with all of this bias. You're not looking through this filter of all of the biases, all of the stories about the other that colors the experience. And like this, you start noticing in your relationships that it's actually the absence of all of this doing, carrying the past, all of the judgment, all of the ideas and biases, basically all of the projection. That in the absence of all of that activity, this is when you start noticing this effortless transformation. You start noticing that because all of that activity has ceased, you actually start experiencing the other start changing, start transforming. Not some sort of transformation of how you want them to be, because this presence has no agenda, it has no desire to change what is. But it's more so that the old past isn't being projected on this moment. Where your thoughts of the other is continuously projected. So in the absence of that stale projection, then there's simply what is. And what is always changing. That in the absence of all this judgment, there is the experience that there's this ongoing forgiveness, but even that wouldn't be quite right, because that implies that something has been done to you that you need to forgive. But really, forgiveness is unconditional love. So without all of that past that's conditioning this moment, this presence that you are is unconditional love. And instead of meeting the moment as a person, it's more that you are the unconditional love that ultimately this moment is. So it has no conditions for how things should be or how they ought to be or this and that. And it's actually the love that you are that transforms everything. But it's very counterintuitive because everything transforms when you stop trying to change everything. In the absence of trying to change everything and manipulate everything and control everything, that's when you start experiencing true transformation. Everything changes once you stop trying to change it. When we're meeting the moment as a person with all of the past, it's simply our projection. How we want things to be, how we want the other to behave, what we think is right and wrong, good and bad, what should happen, what shouldn't happen. All of this is the conditioning that's then projected on this moment, projected on the other. So in the absence of projecting all of that conditioning, then you are just simply meeting this moment unconditionally. And this is unconditional love. You aren't separate from this moment. You aren't separate from the other. So it's more of the absence of all of this activity that we are used to doing. And there's a possibility for true transformation in our relationships. Now, of course, these relationships are relative because ultimately there is no relationship. There's just simply you, reality. And the reality of these relationships is unconditional love. Love is the absence of separation. In realizing the unconditional love that we are and living as that, then you start experiencing true transformation in these apparent relationships. The love that you are is transforming these relationships. effortlessly. So they don't need any effort. It's not transforming via effort. It's the absence of controlling this moment. It's the absence of projecting. It's the absence of conditioning this moment. That really, in the absence of past and future, there's simply now. And this now is unconditional love. So it's almost as if we are freeing ourselves from the past, freeing ourselves from conditioning this moment, freeing ourselves from our own projections, that we experience this transformation. But experientially, it's as if the other is experiencing this transformation too. Ultimately, there is no other. But there's the experience of this transformation. And at times, it can feel very miraculous. But like I said, it's no effort. It's not something that we are doing. There's no intention. There's no goal. There's no motive. There's no desire. There's no... All of this is actually absent. And this innocence, this nakedness of now, it's a true meeting, but you actually aren't meeting the other. That in the absence of bringing the past to this moment and adding it where it becomes a filter, you aren't actually meeting the other. You're experiencing the other as yourself. So this now is whole, it's complete, it's undivided. This now is what you are. This now is unconditional love. So when we aren't identified with thought, and there's no more recycling of thought and projecting the same old story on the other, in the absence of all that, then we start actually experiencing this transformation on the relative level that we experience in our relationships. We're experiencing this transformative flow of now. That's why it feels fresh, new. It's unpredictable. When we take the past and put it on this moment, it's very predictable. It's a recycling of the old. It doesn't feel alive because it's dead. It's just simply thoughts about this moment. It's as if there's a middleman, there's a buffer, there's a filter, there's something in between. It's not a true meeting. The true meeting isn't really a meeting, because a meeting usually implies two. This now is one. Experiencing everything as yourself is unconditional love. Ultimately, the power of transformation is the love that you are. Hope this helps. I'll see you in the next one.